Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure for me and an honor that you invited me to participate in your today's meeting under the title From the Victory Day in May 1945 to the Corona Disarray. I would have liked to accept this invitation, but at the same time I promised my old friend, the Foreign Minister of Luxembourg, Mr. Asselborn, to present a new book about him. It's exactly the same time, so I concentrate myself on speaking to you via video. I'm born in 1938. That means that I was a boy during the wartime, and I started to go to school in 1944, in September 44, when the last year of World War II was already running. Bombing in Vienna was every week, and sometimes twice or three times a week. And if it happened when I was at school, we had to run in the shelter, but it was much worse when it was during the night. And my mother was terribly nervous and nothing was functioning. My parents and many other people were longing and waiting for the end of the war and the Nazi terror and the time of Hitler and his collaborators. On the other hand, they knew that the end will only come after a military defeat of the German Wehrmacht, and that the battle around Vienna was unavoidable. And this battle in Vienna on the ground came early April 45. 10,000 of people were killed and the destruction was incredible. But then, already middle of April, a new administration was built in Vienna, and on the 27th of April, before the end of the war, a new provisional government in Vienna was built and the Declaration of Independence was published. And a new era in our history started, a new democratic era. On April the 30th, Hitler committed suicide, and on May the 8th, World War II in Europe was finished. And it was an incredible big change for all people in the country. Some were followers of the Nazi, and their world was collapsing. Many were victims of the Nazis, and they had new hopes for the time after the war. It was a difficult time. It was a destruction which was incredible, but there was also confidence in the future, in the new future. And the big question was, will people learn from history? Will things become better after the things that happened between World War I and World War II and during World War II? Personally, I'm an optimist. I believe that the development from 1945 until today, and these are 75 years, would not have been possible, and would not have been so positive if people would not have learned a lot of history. But still, things were complicated enough. At the beginning was the founding of the United Nations in June 1945. The Charter was signed in June 1945. 3.5 years later, in December or November 1948, the famous Human Rights Declaration was published. The first article in this declaration reads, all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. And the human dignity is a central point in the Human Rights Declaration. And this is really a new era. It is an incredible document, accepted unanimously. The big problem, of course, is to transfer the wording of the declaration in political praxis. And this task is not yet finished. In Europe, the idea of European cooperation and economic cooperation was strong and was supported by Churchill and de Gasperi from Italy and Monet in France and Roland Lesparre from Belgium, and many other great Europeans were trying to accept the chance for a united Europe. But there was the big problem of the split between East and West, between the communist world under the leadership of Moscow, to give a geographical reference, and the Western world under the leadership of Washington. Stalin wanted obviously to keep all the territories the Red Army had conquered in the last years of World War II. The Cold War started, and nevertheless in Western Europe the idea of European economic cooperation was growing and developing, and then the Treaty of Rome was accepted between 6 European countries at the beginning of, as we call it today, European Community, after a long development. In 1953, March 1953, Stalin died. This was a shock for the Soviet Union. The fight for the leadership started, and finally Khrushchev was the one who was, so to say, the successor. But he didn't want to copy Stalinism. He wanted to make some changes, some reforms. The Western countries called it Tauwetter, political relaxation, to show that one could negotiate with Russia. They were not so stubborn as Stalin. And the Austrian State Treaty, by the way, from May 1955, was a product, a result of this division. The Russian soldiers left Austria in October 1945, together with all other occupation soldiers, and a totally free and independent Austria was created. Not so in Germany. In Germany, the situation was much more complicated. The antagonism was growing, and you know that the Berlin Wall was built in 1961 as a symbol of the division between East and West. And while on the one side NATO was founded as a military alliance, on the other side the Warsaw Treaty was founded also as a military alliance. But the arms race was dangerous for both sides and expensive for both sides. And so in the 70s, the idea of coexistence, of peaceful coexistence, was growing, and it was a success when the Helsinki Treaty of the Conference for Security and Cooperation in Europe was signed. It was a step in the direction of reducing political tensions. On the other hand, in the late 70s and in the early 80s, China, after the death of Mao Zedong, appeared on the world stage. China, a sleeping giant for so many decades, now was marching to a leading position in world economy and world power. And then came the Big Bang of 1989, the collapse of several communist regimes in Eastern Europe, started by the fall of the Iron Curtain, and in particular of the Berlin Wall. And the next step was the collapse, the dissolution of the Soviet Union, while Germany became united and reunited again. The European Economic Cooperation was expanding from 6 members to 9 to 12, and after the fall of the Iron Curtain, the next enlargement step followed with Austria, Finland and Sweden, and finally in 2004 the enlargement to step by step 27 members. This was the situation at the end of the last century, and then political tensions started to grow again. I don't know whether it was really wise to extend NATO till the borders of Russia. I have my doubts. Others say it was necessary. And with President Trump in these days and Xi Jinping on top of China, with the Brexit in Europe, with the coronavirus as a worldwide pandemic, we arrived in the 21st century and in the years just behind us now, in the year 2020. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I have learned in my life that forecasts and prognoses of the future of a country or the future of mankind in 99% are wrong and misleading. It is not possible to forecast the future for a long period. What did we know in the year 1900 about 1920? And what did we know in 1920 about 1940? And in 1940 about 1960, etc., etc.? What did we know in the year 2000 about our present problems, our problems from today? So, what we can do is to try to be successful on the field of cooperation, on the field of disarmament, on the field of actions against damage in our climate, and in the field of democracy and democratization. I think that the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, are really an incredible positive document. It's a miracle, it's a phenomenon that all members of the United Nations could unanimously accept and support the text on central political goals and issues. I'm now trying to work in the Ban Ki-moon Center in Vienna, and I think that here we also can do something very useful and helpful, namely to support the SDGs and to advocate the SDGs. And that's what I want to tell you in this way, and I wish you every success for your conference. And once again, please excuse that I used modern technologies because I couldn't be on 2 places at the same time. All the best. Thank you.